Hey guys, it's been a little bit, and the final update for Boss Battlegrounds before its major rework is finally released. And that means that all of the first 60 characters are now available to play, and the next update's probably not going to be for a couple weeks, maybe until the Star Wars season that we're getting on the 2nd of May. So I think it's a good time to finally get into the discussion of a tier list for Boss Battlegrounds. And I've already made some mock ones before, but I think now might be a good time to actually make one on YouTube, and I think this could be really fun. So I've got all the characters here, and we're going to go into them one at a time. So firstly, let's go over Zig. And you can see that I've actually selected the icons for characters that have their loadout selected. So you can see that Zig here has a plasma cannon, the Zig Entropy ray gun, and an alien nanites, right? Now, the thing about Boss Battlegrounds is every single character except for one has the ability to dash. So while some have more versatile mobility than others, everyone has the ability to move around. But if you saw the previous video on Boss Battlegrounds on who can cross FNC Construct, some characters definitely have better mobility than others. And obviously we're going to be taking all types of mobility into account with combat here. And the problem with Zig is alien nanites aren't very combat effective. And obviously some characters are going to have a very high skill ceiling compared to others. So the problem with Zig here is he's kind of a low damage character. The plasma cannon doesn't do very much damage. And it's better on maps like FNC Construct because you can shoot it down a hallway and completely shut that hallway down. He will be amazing in the back rooms when that becomes a map in the next major rework update. But for all the 4 existing maps right now, Zig's kit is kind of limited. And I don't think he's terrible. I think the Zig Entropy ray gun can do a lot of damage. So I think for now he belongs in C tier. I don't think he's bad enough to go into B tier. D tier. And he's definitely not terrible like a bunch of the troll characters, so I don't think he can go into the D tier either. So I think Zig belongs kind of low in the C tier. Now, Zeus, on the other hand, is slightly better. And the thing that Zeus has going for him is while Zig definitely has the better weapon with the ray gun, Zeus has the Thunderbolt of Zeus, which is not great. It can do over 200 damage if you hit all 3 shots. And considering every character in Boss Battlegrounds has 600 health, with the exception of one, which we'll get into later, the Thunderbolt of Zeus is pretty useful. It's definitely good for third-partying other people, but the thing that really makes Zeus great is the Banana of the Gods. Not many characters in Boss Battlegrounds can heal. Now, while every single character does have a slight passive healing when they're out of combat, Zeus can heal whenever he wants with this banana, and he can move while using it too, which makes it definitely one of the better healing items in the game. And considering not many characters have healing items, that definitely gives Zeus a boost. That being said, Zeus is definitely a longer range character, and that means he struggles at close combat, where some of the best characters in the game thrive. And that also, Zeus, when he uses Thunderbolt, is kind of like a sitting duck. So that being said, I do think Zeus definitely goes into B tier. I might even bump him up to A tier later, but we will see. Okay, the Wanderer. Now, this is important. The Wanderer as a character is exceptionally good at one thing. And this applies to the Origin as well when we get to him, because these two share an ability. It goes under different names, but it mechanically works the same. There are some characters in Boss Battlegrounds who have custom abilities. The Wanderer is the first one on this tier list that we're going to be talking about. So, first of all, we're going to go over Nitro. And Nitro is pretty good in Boss Battlegrounds because it enhances your mobility, but it also gives you the ability to combo. This works even better with like Nitro Fist characters, but what you can do is shoulder bash them, shoot them, sprint into them, and shoulder bash them again. And because of combo potential, Nitro is a pretty good third item to have. The Monarch Pistol can do a lot of damage, But both of those things would honestly put Wanderer into like C tier probably, if it wasn't for his third ability. Now, the Wanderer's third ability is Doom Blast. The Cube Energy Blast works the exact same way, but the way Doom Blast works is when you use this ability, it will immediately grant the Wanderer a bunch of health, plus a regen, and then does this like damaging blast within 3 tiles that damages the Wanderer and everyone else around him. But the regen is so powerful that it's essentially a healing item. You can use this when you are at like, what, 2 health? And immediately restore your health to basically 500 after using this ability. Which is incredible. If the Wanderer and Origin didn't heal as much as they did, they would not be nearly as high on this list. But they have incredible healing factor. And because of that healing factor alone, I do think the Wanderer has to go into probably S-. Actually, I'll put him in A for now, just because the Origin is a character I'm going to plan on putting in S-. But I will buff Wanderer up to S- later on if I feel like it. Kind of the same situation as Zeus here. Okay, Jones. Now, Jones is a very good character. He's called the Legend in Boss Battlegrounds, but Jones, Legend, whatever you want to call him. This was the default class for a while, and he is currently a required part of the tutorial. So he's definitely one of the easier characters to learn how to play. Thunderburst SMG is incredible, does a lot of damage, pretty accurate. Problem is, it's not a hit scan weapon, and in a game with a lot of hit scan characters as well, Jones does have that disadvantage, but it doesn't matter because if you're skilled with the weapon, you're gonna do good. Ballistic Shield doesn't do very much damage, and honestly, the problem with the Ballistic Shield is it's very good in maps where you have really low health, but in Boss Battlegrounds where you have 600, it's really not that great. I mean, it's a similar situation in Nitro where you can bash people, but it's not a great item. The thing that pushes Jones up, though, is the Grapple Blade. Melee weapons are incredible in Boss Battlegrounds, and they are highly valued on the tier list, because they give you incredible mobility, a lot more combo potential with the dash as well, because no characters except one regain their dashes instantly, and they have to wait for the cooldown to recharge. Dashes can combo really well with that. And Grapple Blade is a very high mobility, high combo potential weapon that has the potential to strike your damage up pretty high if you're really skilled. But it also means you have a lot of getaway options, which certain other characters don't have. So for this, I am going to put Jones into the A tier. I think I'm going to keep him below the Wanderer though, just because the Wanderer has that immensely good healing factor. Then we have Valeria. So, Valeria, I think, is going to be our first D tier. Because you might notice that Valeria has a medallion, and you're wondering, we don't have medallions in creative. What does that mean? So, all of the society characters have a very, very... First of all, they're the only character, I believe, to have shield regen when you're out of combat, without any perks. Which means that when they're out of combat, they're going to be regenerating their health a lot faster. And that's a huge bonus to them, but it also means they lack an extra item. The problem with that is when you need variety to make the most of your character, that means that some characters like Valeria are very limited. And Valeria's SMG honestly feels like you're being shot with a Nerf gun. It doesn't hurt at all. Like, Valeria's damage is pitiful, and since fire doesn't spread, her Firefly Jar is pretty weak as well. I think Valeria is going to be our first D tier character. She's just not strong enough to stand on her own on the tier list. Speaking of characters who are below her though, we have Skye. Now, the thing with Skye is Skye does have good mobility, but she only has one offensive weapon, being her assault rifle. Now, Boss Battlegrounds does have these fun characters, like Skye, who can mess around with items like cardboard boxes, but at the end of the day, that item just isn't good. It's not going to help you in the slightest, everyone still knows where you are, it does literally nothing. Skye is a troll pick, which there are a couple troll picks on this list, But every single troll pick are usually pretty bad. Sky's going into F tier. She's going to be our first F tier on this list. That being said, Tauren. So, the problem with Tauren is the Shadow Flopper, it's interesting mobility. Tauren is a good counter to the Sweat, kind of. There's better counters to the Sweat out there. And we'll get into the Sweat shortly. But the Sideways Scythe is a pretty bad melee weapon in comparison to all the others. It doesn't do much damage. You do get Siphon per kill, or is it on hit? Honestly, I don't remember. It's barely any, and you're not going to be doing enough damage to make it worth it. Dual Fiend Hunters are kind of pitiful. They're not very strong. But she does have more options than Valeria. So, while I do think she's going to be a D tier, I do think she is better than Valeria. I think she's going to be higher on the D tier. Just because she does have that melee option that, you know, some characters like Valeria don't. I might increase her spot on the list later. Tina, though, is also going to go into D tier. Now, Tina has a pretty big problem. And you might be curious what that problem is. It's her Boombo and the way it works in creative. Unfortunately, the Boombo we have in creative does not use shotgun shells as ammo. It has infinite recharging ammo. Which is a problem, because that doesn't work with creative infinite ammo. If you shoot the bow 5 times, it might look like you can fire again, but you still have to wait for that invisible cooldown, which is a huge problem. Now, Dynamite can stack up damage really quickly if the player is going to sit still and take it. So while TNT is an amazing counter to, again, the Sweat, the problem there is Dynamite takes forever to explode, unless you're holding it out and charging it. Which could be efficient, but it just means that you have to hold it there for a while, and when timing is kind of everything in Boss Battlegrounds combat, TNT is pretty slow. And as for the Burst Quad Launcher, low damage, highly inaccurate. It's only really good against breaking builds at close range. She has really low damage output, and takes her forever to, you know, actually hit someone. I think Tina, once again, she's better than Valeria, but I don't think she's very great. So I think I'm going to put her here on the tier list. Kato Thorn, okay. This is a character I'm probably actually going to put into S-. I'm just thinking about that. Because here's the thing with Kato Thorn. Kato Thorn is one of the 2 characters in BBG who can fly forever. And that is a pretty strong thing. The difference is when Kato Thorn is flying, he can't do anything other than fly and crash land. And that's why the other character is going to be very high up on the tier list later on. Kato Thorn does have the better kinetic blade over anyone else who has it, simply because his gives him Siphon per hit. Which means he can live a little longer than other characters. And the Scoped Burst SMG, it's a decent weapon. It does hit a little like a wet blanket like some other weapons do. But overall, Thorn is one of the highest mobility characters in the game, and that immediately carries him up the tier list. And he's just a really fun character to play too. Like, a lot of people really like Kato Thorn, especially like Nineace, who plays with us quite a bit here. Like, when we play Boss Battlegrounds, it's mostly me and my friend group, right? And Kato Thorn is Nineace's main, and you would be maining a character if they were fun, and I think it shouldn't carry them up the tier list that much if they're that fun to play, but I do think it could carry them up a couple spots. I do think Kato Thorn is like the bottom of S-. I don't think he's going to be much higher, but I do think he belongs higher up on the list. That being said, we're moving into our next S- character, which is going to be the Sweat. Now, the Sweat is an interesting character because they break the rules of the game entirely. The Sweat cannot dash. They are the only character in the game who does not have the ability to do a forward dash, which means they struggle to get out of a lot of situations. But if you can see the icon there, the difference is the Sweat can build, and they are incredible because of that. We were chasing down a Sweat, 4 of us, and we were unable to kill them for 5 minutes. Granted, they didn't have the ability to do anything because we were all targeting them, but if a sweat, like a person who's really good at building, can survive for that long and heal because they have slurpfish, that makes them one of the characters with the highest survivability in the game, which is a massive deal. And they do some pretty good damage output too with the AR and the spaz. So honestly, I think the sweat is currently going to be our top of S-. If you're wondering why we're using a custom thing here instead of like tier maker, by the way, advertisements, that's why. Okay, Stray. Now, Stray is just worse Kato Thorn. Reason being, his kinetic blade has less options than Thorn's. I believe it might have the same amount of charges, but it doesn't have the siphon. He does have the enhanced havoc, which can do 200 plus damage per headshot, which is good. That means 3 headshots will kill. The problem with Stray at the moment is the fact that the lock-on pistol is currently broken in creative. It doesn't work as intended. So while it's a pretty decent hit scan pistol, it's not very good compared to some of the other hit scan weapons like the Sweat's AR or the Thorn Scope Burst SMG. I'm gonna put Stray in between Wanderer and Jones, I think. I think this is where Stray will go on the tier list for now. Because I do think Kinetic Blade, while it has less charges, it is faster than the Grapple Blade. And overall, I just think Stray has better guns than Jones. So I'm going to put him here. Spire Assassin. Oh boy, where do we start with you? Okay. The problem with Spire Assassin is her mobility is bad. The Spire jump boots, while they are decently bad in Battle Royale, they are abysmal in Boss Battlegrounds. They don't really serve much of a purpose. The Recycler is a terrible weapon. And while the Primal Shotgun is good, the other 2 slots of our inventory are just kind of pitiful. They don't help her much at all. And I do think Spire Assassin, she has higher damage than anyone in D tier. And I do think that puts her into C tier at the very least. But I think she's going to be lower on the C tier list. We need to fix some of these characters down here. There we go. Okay. Sloan. We got to talk about Dr. Sloan. So, Sloan has been probably one of the characters on the tier list who has fluctuated the most throughout every single update. She was like a C tier. Like a bottom of B, like high C in like the first iteration of the game. But every single update she has gotten better. Namely because of one ability in particular. Sloan is one of the other characters in BBG who has a custom ability, being the Sloan Clone. Now, the Sloan Clone gives her the ability to create AI-controlled clones of herself that will follow you around and attack enemies who are attacking you or who you are attacking. They will basically just follow your lead. And they all wield overclock pulse rifles, they have a third of your health, and they shoot pretty fast too. Like, they are pretty accurate. So those clones are pretty good. And they can quickly overwhelm people. Now, Sloan's problem is the fact that clone AI can also be pretty terrible sometimes. So they're honestly a gamble on if they're going to absolutely shred your opponent, or if they are going to be a waste of space. And in her most recent rework, she will now spawn all 3 clones at once. And that can be a little inconsistent sometimes with the way they spawn, which sucks, and I need to fix that. But until that's fixed, her ability is still better than it's ever been. It just could be better. But because of the inconsistency of that, the kind of almost uselessness of the railgun, I do think Sloan is going to be the bottom of A tier. I don't think she's weak enough to be a B tier character. I think she has enough potential to be A tier, but I do think she's going to be on the lower end. And that brings us into Skillet. Now, here's the thing with Skillet. if you guys don't know, for some reason, Thermite does pitiful damage to players, but to the test dummies, it kills them in seconds. Skillet is a character who is incredible at status farming. Now, I'll quickly explain status farming to everyone who's new to Boss Battlegrounds. Status farming is when you are farming boss status. And boss status is... Okay, so when you get kill streaks in Boss Battlegrounds without dying, you gain perks to become even stronger. At 3, you gain speed level 1. At 5, you'll gain regeneration. At 10, you gain a damage boost of 1.5. And at 15, you gain speed level 2, and you achieve something called boss status. Boss status makes you incredibly powerful and hard to take down, and it might require multiple people to take you down. Skillet is incredible at status farming, because he can farm test dummies like no one else can. He's also got one of the best mobility in the game, in the form of the Shockwave RPG. Shockwave RPG is incredible. It makes you incredibly hard to hit and unpredictable with where you land. You can basically spam it because it doesn't have a cooldown like other most melee abilities. You can obviously combo that into the dash. And overall, the sticky grenade launcher can do pretty decent damage. If Thermite shredded players like it did the test dummies, Skillet would be to the stars on the tier list. But simply because it's only good for status farming, he kind of has a hit or miss third item. And I do think that puts Skillet as our very top of A tier character. If I can just move all 4 of these out of the way for him. I think Skillet belongs at the very top of A tier right now. Alright, now we're going to get into our next S- character, which is Shredder. Now, every single character who has the Nitro Fists is incredible with combos. And Shredder is kind of a weird hybrid between Dr. Sloan and Gunner, where his loadout is similar to Gunner with the Nitro Fists and the high rate of fire heavy weapon, but he also has the old version of the Sloan clone ability, where you spawn 1 minion at a time. The difference is Shredder's minions have different weapons, instead of just the overclocked pulse rifle. And that adds a little more RNG to his clone abilities. And that makes Shredder a bit of an interesting character. I do think, out of the 4 Nitro Fist characters, he is better than one of them. And I do think that, like, at the moment, just because of the sheer power of Nitro Fist, how much damage they can do and their combo potential, especially with the dash, I think Shredder is definitely, at the moment, the top of S tier. Or top of S- specifically. But I do think he will be dethroned later on. Now we're actually going to get into our first S+ tier. S+ tier is for the characters who are truly broken and have an item that immediately carries them. S+ tier is reserved for characters with the Fire Oni mask. This item is insanity. The Fire Oni mask has the ability to auto-lock. You have an infinite number of them, and they don't have a cooldown. 100 damage per hit. If you throw 6 Oni masks at someone, they are dead. And that is insanity of how broken that is. Trust me, we've tried to nerf it. We don't know how much more we can nerf the Fire Mask. We've done our best. So I think any character who has a Fire Oni mask immediately belongs in S+ tier. And I do think that he is going to be dethroned later as the best character in BBG. But the Oni shotgun is okay. It's not great. It's a pretty decent item. The Typhoon Blade, though, is a really good melee weapon. And it gives him some pretty high mobility. Shogun X is better than most characters in BBG. He's actually the second best character in the game. But he doesn't have the best mobility options compared to some of the other characters on the list. And I think the mobility is actually the reason why he cannot be the best character in BBG. And we will get to that later. Next up, though, is probably the worst character in Boss Battlegrounds. Sergeant Winner. It's going straight to F tier. Sergeant Winner has a pretty awful weapon. His mobility is slightly better than Sky's. And he's got a troll item that does no damage. Honestly, Sky and Winter are interchangeable for the worst character in Boss Battlegrounds. I personally think Sky's got a better weapon, though, so I think she's better than Winter. But honestly, you guys can decide which of those two is worse. Okay, but now we have Ringmaster Scar, one of the two new characters. Or one of the two newest characters, rather. Now, Ringmaster Scar, she is basically better TNTina. She has Nitro, which gives her that combo potential. She has Dynamite, like TNTina, which is TNTina's best item. But what, of course, makes her the best, or one of the better characters, is probably the Boom Bolt. Boom Bolt does good damage. It's a sticky thing. If you hit it, it does 2 stacks of damage as a result. Of course, you can probably hit headshots with it. It's a pretty decent weapon, honestly. It's not that bad. It's a pretty good item. And as a result, I do think this makes Ringmaster Scar at least a B tier character. The Boom Bolt puts her into the B tier. But she's definitely not better than Zeus. Zeus is better than she is. Let's have an overlap wanderer there. Alright, Relic. Oh boy, we have another D tier. Okay. So, Relic has a pretty big problem. And Relic's problem is the fact that 2 of his items kind of suck. And one of these items is actually worthless. So, Wild Wasps have the potential to actually get kills. They can be decent, not great. They're better than the Firefly Jar, but they're not great. The MK Alpha can be pretty decent sometimes. It's a pretty good weapon. But the Cloak Gauntlets bring Relic down by a lot, because they actually do nothing. In Boss Battlegrounds, you can see everyone's nameplate. That means that even if Relic is invisible, you can still see where he is. It makes him harder to land headshots on, I guess. But no, Relic is actually our worst in D tier. He is painfully bad. Raz. Okay. So Raz is okay, because Raz has a pretty meh assault rifle. He's got pretty good mobility, actually. The 0-point pretzel gives you the ability to dash around in all directions. And that means that, and you can do it for the entirety that you have that duration. And that can give Raz some incredible mobility to get away from fights, or even just, like, dance around the fight. I honestly think Raz has a lot of potential. And of course his bow, if you're incredible with bows, does 200 plus damage on a headshot, which is insanity of how good that is. But again, the problem is, all of these items are pretty high skill ceiling, and that does unfortunately tank Relic's abilities. So, I do think Relic is going to go into the C tier. I do think he's better than Spyro Assassin. He's not better than Zig. Zig has just better options, I think. Nah, he's better than Zig. I think Raz is top of C right now. Okay, let's get into the first of the turtles, Raphael. Honestly, I kind of want to put all the turtles together. So we'll get to Raphael later, because the turtles should all be a discussion at once. Because they are very similar in terms of characters, and they would all be together. So I'm going to save Raphael for later. Anyway, next up is the Paradigm. So, Paradigm is scary, because Paradigm, when doing her dash attack with her Light Blade, can do 300 damage per hit. That is half of your health bar. The downside is Paradigm has to get incredibly close to deal that amount of damage. And of course, with a game that's kind of focused on high mobility, that makes it pretty hard for Paradigm to actually get those hits. So she's very good at picking off some of the lower mobility characters on the list. She does have the Rocket Drill, which gives her some pretty good flight capability, and she can get around pretty far because of that. And she also has the Twin Mag SMG, which is it's a pretty good SMG. I'm not that great with it personally, but I know a lot of people who are. And I think Paradigm is definitely an S- character. As a matter of fact, I think she can go above these two. I do think her range is her weakness with her melee weapon. So I don't think she's going to be better than Shredder. But I do think she's going to be better than the Sweat because she can just melt through Sweat's builds. And she is better than Kato Thorn damage-wise. I think she goes into S-. Oscar is bottom of S tier, or bottom of S-. The reason for that is damage. Oscar is one of the highest DPS characters in the game. He can shred through anyone's health. He has that same Society Medallion ability that Valeria and Montague have. And the Frenzy Auto Shotgun is a pretty good shotgun too. Honestly, Oscar's only problem is his mobility. If Oscar had a good mobility option, I think he has the potential to be towards the top of S-. But simply because he lacks that mobility option, I don't think I can put him any more than the bottom of S-. But that damage is incredible, and I definitely think Oscar mains are underrated. But that brings us into the Origin. Now, Origin is Wanderer but better. And honestly, so far, Origin goes here. Honestly, you know what? I think Origin goes above Paradigm. And to talk about Origin in further detail, he's got the same rocket drill, which gives him the exact same mobility the Paradigm has. He has the healing factor that the Wanderer has, which is absurd how good that is. And he has the Sideways minigun. The Sideways minigun was able to kill people with one charge in the 1000 health versions of the game. Which, if you could imagine how good it was then, imagine how good it was now. Well, sorry, how good it is now. Honestly, Origin is definitely going to be an underrated character. His survivability, just like the Wanderer's, is insane. Arguably better because he has better items. Origin is incredible. But that brings us into the Night Rose, and oh, how the mighty have fallen. The Night Rose was previously the best character in Boss Battlegrounds. She had a better weapon than Shogun X. Her Void Mask gave her better mobility than Shogun X. And she had the Fire Mask. Now, if you're wondering why Shogun X would have been worse when he literally has the Typhoon Blade, the answer is simple. Why would you need the Typhoon Blade when the Fire Mask is literally right there and you have a dash to run and gun with it? There was no reason to do that. She just had better mobility. And it was definitely debatable whether she or Shogun X was the best character in the game previously, but she has been dethroned simply because of one of the newest characters in this final version of the build. And unfortunately, because of similarities with that character, she had to lose the Fire Oni mask. And now she has the Oni shotgun, which she shares with Shogun X, and that tanks her placement on the tier list. Honestly, I haven't even thought about where she's going to go yet. I need to think about that. Let's see. She doesn't have a Fire Mask anymore, so she's not immediately in an S+. Her SMG is pretty good. It's another kind of Pez dispenser in terms of damage. And honestly, her damage isn't great. She has the Void Mask, which is incredible mobility. But her damage just is really... Honestly, that might be a hot take. I think she's B now. She lost her best asset, and the asset that replaced it is not great. Honestly, I think Scar is better. I think she's B tier. You guys can fight me in the comments. I think she's B tier now. Okay, we don't even need to talk. We didn't even need to talk about this one. We didn't even need to talk. Montague is the worst society member. He has mobility, but that limits his damage options. His weapon, I would argue, is debatably worse than Valeria. No, he's got a better weapon than Valeria. But at the same time, Valeria also has the Firefly Jar. So, like, she has more options. Montague's got better mobility, but it's not great mobility. Okay, you know what? Just because of how good mobility is in BBG, he has more options than Valeria does. Either way, they're interchangeable. Those two are really bad. Okay, we have a new S- on the list. Midas is incredible. This is the most picked character in Boss Battlegrounds, and there is a good reason for it. Midas's damage is absurdly good. He is incredible. The Midas drum gun does some pretty decent damage. The Outlaw shotgun is okay, but let's be real. You're using Midas for the Mythic Goldfish. The Mythic Goldfish, 3 hits at no boss status. Sorry, at 10 kills, it 2 hits. Considering you can just spam that thing, and no one else has it, Midas belongs at the top of S-. Like, I don't know if he's the very, very tip-top of S-, but he at least belongs there. Like, he belongs in, like, tip-top of S-. Midas is insane. Okay, and we have our second turtle, so we can move them to one side. Now we have the Scout. So where does the Scout go on the tier list? Scout's going to go kind of low. And yeah, this is based off Scout TF2 if you couldn't tell. The problem with the Scout is the double-barrel shotgun. He doesn't have a double barrel. He has the dub. And the dub gives him some good mobility. He's a very fun class to play. The kneecapper is a very good weapon. And he can heal. But the problem is he doesn't have another weapon to damage other than the kneecapper. Because the dub's damage is pitifully low. It knocks you back. It's got, like, a decently long reload. Honestly, Scout is a close-range only character. And that definitely knocks him down a peg. He doesn't have that long-range capability that some other characters do. I do think Scout goes into B tier, though. I think having a melee weapon in general, like, if it's, like, other than, like, I don't know, the Sideway Scythe, should at least put you into B tier. I think Night Rose is better. But Scout belongs here. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, boy. We're getting into the meme characters, aren't we? If you guys saw my previous video, you already know where this character is going. But I think I need to justify why they're going where they are. I think Mosquito is the second best character in the game. And the reason for that is the fact that Mosquito can fly infinitely and attack while doing it. He breaks the rules of Boss Battlegrounds. He is the only character who can permanently sit at the top of the map and snipe everyone with a bow, picking them off one by one with headshots, body shots, whatever he's doing. The only time you would ever use the rocket ram is if you're trolling. Mosquito is so hard to kill, can get kills at a pretty high skill ceiling rate. Like, this is definitely the highest skill ceiling character in S+ tier, bar none. Probably one of the highest skill ceiling characters in the game, bar none. But Mosquito breaks the rules of Boss Battlegrounds. And if a character can break the rules of how the game is played, that immediately, I think, puts them into S+. Because no other character can compete with them. There is one character who I think can compete with Mosquito, and we will get into why later, and they will be at the top of S+. There's only 3 characters in S+ tier. So we'll come back to that later, but honestly, Mosquito could even deserve their own tier, and the reason I'm putting them above Shogun X is just to make Enderbite happy, let's be real. She will crash out in the comments otherwise. But there is some truth to what she is saying. Mosquito is broken, and there is no way to nerf Mosquito. It is impossible to nerf him. And that sucks. Mosquito is going to be a permanent S+ tier. That's just how it is. Dark Lord. Oh my god. Dark Lord goes here. So the thing with Dark Lord is Dark Lord has incredible mobility. He has the Void Only Mask, which allows him to teleport wherever he wants, and he can pretty much keep that Void there as long as he wants. He has one of the TMNT weapons, which, if you have a TMNT weapon, you basically already belong in S+, or sorry, S-. And he has the Thunderbolts of Zeus, meaning he has incredible third-party potential. The only reason Midas is above him is because of Midas' sheer damage output. Midas has unparalleled damage in Boss Battlegrounds. There is only one character who does more damage in this game than Midas does. And that character probably still won't be an S-. So I do believe that this is where Dark Lord goes. He's definitely on the higher end of S- tier. And speaking of which, we have another S- character here. And that's Mama Chica. Oh god, we're getting both the April Fool's characters back to back. The thing is, Mama Chica is the worst Nitro Fist character in the game. She has a higher skill ceiling than most of them, simply because she has the Stink Sniper Rifle, which does have the ability to one-shot headshot. Well, actually, no, it doesn't. In Battle Royale, it would. So she can do over 200 damage, which is great. The problem is, the Stink Grenade is basically worthless. It does nothing to you. And the only reason she's up this high is because she's a Nitro Fist character, which Nitro Fists basically dominate Boss Battlegrounds out of any other mobility item. They are the best mobility item in BBG. Or sorry, the best mobility weapon in BBG. But I do think she is the weakest of the Fist characters, so I think that lands her slightly above the Origin right here. That being said, immediately we have Megalodon, who is the best Nitro Fist character in BBG. Oh boy. So Megalodon goes here, because all the Fist characters go together. But Megalodon is the best one. He has the best combo potential, because he has Nitro, which immediately increases his combo output by a lot. He has more charges than every other Fist character, because he's the only one with the Mythic Fists. And the Combat Shotgun also combos really well with Nitro. Megalodon is insane. Honestly, simply because of the extra charges, I'm debating on putting him above Dark Lord. But the problem is, Megalodon lacks range. So while he is absolutely the best Fist character, his lack of range does bring him down. And that means he won't overtake Dark Lord. So he's gonna stay here. Machinist. Oh boy, where do we put the Machinist? The Machinist is interesting. And the reason... Ooh. So she has Nitro, first of all. So she's got another good combo. The thing is, she doesn't really have anything that combos well with Nitro. She does have the Business Turret and is the only character in the game to have a Sentry ability. So the way you kind of want to play her is to just kind of sit in one corner, like maybe near spawn, and just kill people who are fighting nearby. The thing is, it's also easier to break her turret. So she's kind of like a run, like, you know, you place your turret, you sit by your turret, turret gets broken, you run away and place another one. That's kind of the way she plays. And while the turret is auto-lock, it is an incredible weapon, it's not really enough. I do think she's an A-tier character. I think Sloane is better. I think she's going to go like right here for now. Alright, we have Lorenzo. Now, Lorenzo is one of the two newest characters, and honestly, Lorenzo's not great. First of all, he's got Wild Wasps, which again, aren't great, but it's better than some other items on this list. The Kinetic Boomerang is definitely the weakest of the melee weapons, I think. What carries him, I think, into C tier, though, is the Flapjack Rifle. Lorenzo has a really high magazine size. I think he goes here. I think... Ooh, actually... He might be higher than Zig and Choppy. I think Raz is better for the mobility. I think Lorenzo goes there. I think he's definitely a C tier, just because the Kinetic Boomerang's so bad compared to other melee weapons. And, you know, Wild Warps aren't great either, but I think the Flapjack puts him into C tier. I think, yeah, that's a good spot for him. Alright. Once again, we'll get to all the human T characters. We're just waiting on Donatello to show up. Next up, we have Knight Conqueror. Black Knight. Whatever you want to call him. It's the OG version of Black Knight. So this character is interesting because he is the only character with the... Oh, I can't English today. He has the highest damage output out of any character in the game. Because the Zapatron deals 325 on a headshot. I think. It's something like that. The thing is, when you have the kill streak perk of 1.5 times damage, Knight Conqueror is the only character who can deal over 500 damage in a single shot. Which is insane. He can shred through anyone's health bar, and that means he can one-shot any person who is playing as the Ice King. The only character in the game who is capable of being one-shot right now. And as a result, I think Knight Conqueror, just because of his sheer damage output, at least belongs in B tier. The grenade, it does 100 damage per explosion. It's okay. The problem is you can't aim it because it's the OG version, which makes him different from Gunner. And the burst assault rifle is pretty decent. I think he's gonna go bottom of B tier. Just because... actually, you know what? I'm going to put him below Zeus. I think Knight Conqueror belongs below Zeus. I think that's a good spot for him. Kit is going to be bottom of B... Ooh, actually. I'm just thinking. Kit is meant to be a trick shot character. You're meant to, like, trick shot people with a charged shotgun. Which means you need to rush fights. He's got pretty good mobility because of the shockwave launcher. Like, that's incredible. The AK gives him some pretty decent mid-range capabilities. The charged shotgun, though, is not a good... Like, it's not great at close range. It's definitely a trick shot character. I think Kit, just because of his mobility, puts him here. I think he's slightly below Scout. Jules is an A tier because of her glider gun exploit. That gives her some of the best mobility in the game. Harpoon gun doesn't do great damage. Drum gun doesn't do great. Like, it does decent damage. Her drum gun does decent damage. I think her mobility alone puts her, like, bottom of A. I think Machinist can still beam her out the sky. I think she can be better than Zeus at times. I think she belongs there. It's been a little bit, but we have our next S-, Joss. So, here's the thing about Joss. Joss has the potential to be abysmal or insane. Because every time she respawns, her loadout changes between any lawless exotic item. Which means she can have 2 healing items. It means she can have 2 sniper rifles. Or she can have the Blink Pump and Dump and the Shockwave RPG, which is probably her best loadout. Or she can have the Blink Pump and Dump or the Accelerant Hollow Twister. She can have the Shockwave RPG or the Accelerant Hollow Twister. Joss can have either the worst loadout known to man or the best loadout in the game. Or like one of the best loadouts in the game. And for the sheer potential, and even then, a lot of the items and the combos she can get with them are pretty good. She can get some pretty good weapons regardless of how bad some of the weapon combos can be. Honestly, I think she's on the lower end of A tier. I do think she's going to go, like, after the sweat right here. Yeah, I think she goes here. Joss, just because of how good the Pump and Dump is, how good the Shockwave RPG is, how good the Accelerant Hollow Twister is, I think she goes here. She has potential to be busted. I think that's a good spot for her. Okay. This is one that's really interesting. Because this character is insane. Double pump. Each pump can do 250 headshot. This character can hit 3 of those in a row with double pump. And he has mobility. This character is insane. But the problem is, Boss Battlegrounds is a highly mobile game. You are moving around a lot. So while he's insane against stationary targets, he also has an incredibly high skill ceiling now. Jonesy the First, because of his skill ceiling, I think he belongs in A tier. I think he goes next to Stray. But if he was easier to pull off, he'd be busted. But I think just because of how highly mobile this game is, I think he belongs here. Alright, and now we need to talk about the most interesting character in Boss Battlegrounds. And that's the Ice King. The Ice King only has the Infinity Blade in his loadout, because it's the only thing he can hold. Because that thing takes 5 inventory slots. The problem with the Infinity Blade is it also forces you to have 400 health regardless of your settings. This means he's the only character in the game with less health than everyone else. This means that Night Conqueror can one-shot him, he lacks the capabilities that a lot of other characters have, and just overall, the Infinity Blade is kind of a shadow of its former self. He can do 200 damage per landing that he does on a slam ability, and you're only really going to want to spam the slam. The problem is, when you slam, you're also left vulnerable for 1 second. This is a problem. This kind of tanks the Ice King's placement on the list. Because if you miss, you're getting beamed. That's bad. Ice King definitely is a B tier. Honestly, I think he goes right next to Night Conqueror. If I'm going to be honest with you, I think he does more damage than Scar. I think he goes here. If Ice King had 600 health, I think he'd be an A tier. But having less health than everyone else is a pretty big problem. Alright, next up we have Deadpool, aka Hybrid. I'm serious, I designed this loadout to be based off of Deadpool. He does have dual suppressed pistols, though, instead of dual pistols. He has a TMNT Mythic that boasts his position on the list. Shadow Bomb is kind of bad. I think Hybrid is an A tier, just because he has a pretty good melee. I'm going to put him above Sloan. I think this is a good spot for him. I think Jones has the better melee. I think that's where Hybrid will go. Hope is an S-. She has one of the best melees and one of the best mobility melees. And she has one of the best ranged weapons. Honestly, I think Hope beats out Paradigm. I don't think... She doesn't have that insane healing. And she doesn't have, Nitro Fist levels of, melee. I think she goes just below the Origin. I think that's a good spot for her. Because Hope is a really good character. Any character in S- is really good. So, honestly, if you think, this character is worse, honestly, a lot of these characters in S- are really close to each other. Speaking of characters in high tiers, we have Herald. I think Herald is an A tier. She does some really good damage. That's Herald's thing. She's got good close range coverage with the Evachrome shotgun. She's got really good range damage with the burst rifle. Where Herald lacks is her mobility. She does have the Zero Crystal, or the Zero Pretzel, which gives her the same mobility options as Raz. I do think that makes Herald pretty good. Honestly, I think Herald is going to go just below the Wanderer in A tier. I think that's a really good spot for her. Yeah, I'm going to stick with that. I think that's a good spot for the Herald. If you guys disagree, let me know in the comments. If you disagree with any of these choices, let me know in the comments below. Hades. Oh, God, Hades. Okay. This man used to be the best character in Boss Battlegrounds. My opinion has changed. He does have some insane weapons, though. I actually think that this character is the second highest in S- for now. I think he does beat out Dark Lord. I think Midas does have better DPS. The reason Hades was so high is because of how insane the Chains of Hades was in terms of DPS. And it's honestly crazy to me that the two best characters in S-, in my opinion, do not have great mobility options. The problem is they just do so much damage so quickly that they can just shred through anyone, even those with high mobility options. I think, even though they don't have a mobility, their damage is so high that they can compete with everyone else in S-. And I think that immediately puts them at the top of S-. They don't have, like, a broken item, like some of the other auto-lock ones in S+, but they do belong this high on the list. I do think that Hades and Midas belong this high. Speaking of other S- characters, we have our final Nitro Fist character, Gunner, and I do think he is the second best of these characters. Now, ooh, actually, does he? You know, I'm changing my mind. I think Shredder is better. I think Shredder is actually better than Gunner. Like, looking at their loadouts again, the Warforged has better range and better damage than the Stinger SMG. Grenades make him better against the Sweat. But Shredder can have 3 minions as well, and that makes Shredder really good. Honestly, yeah, I think Shredder is better than Gunner. I think that's where they go. I'm noticing here that S+ is, like, really, like, covered now. I'm gonna actually do a thing. I'm gonna move some of these characters. And I'm gonna stretch the tier list image here. Or, like, the background for it. Because I think that needs to be changed. Yeah, alright. We have more room in S- here now. Okay, so next up we have the Covert Cast. The Covert Cast is definitely some of the weakest characters in BBG. Starting with this guy. Honestly, I think this guy is top of F tier. I'm gonna be real. Actually, is he? Nah, he's better than Relic. He's got more options than Relic. I'm gonna be... Oh, he might be better than Society too. Okay. I think he goes here. The NSL Guard is definitely the worst covert character in the game. His pistol's bad. His SMG's bad. But he does have smoke grenades as well. But that being said, he has better weapon options than everyone else in D tier and F tier. He's not better than TNTina though. I refuse to believe that. TNTina is better. Okay, we do have one of the better covert characters though. Once again, Ballistic Shield is not great in BBG. The thing that makes the NSL elite, yeah, the NSL elite, is he has the Overdrive, which buffs his AR and stuff considerably for a short period of time. And the TAC AR, the modular one, isn't that bad. I do think he's a B tier character. I think he goes below Scar. I think he is the best covert character in the game still. So that immediately tells you that the Defect Rebel is going to be lower on the list. As it stands right now, Defect Rebel is the middle ground for these guys. His grenades do less damage than everybody else's, because it's the first-person grenade, which isn't great. He has a hammer shotgun, which can do mediocre damage at close range. The LMG is what brings this character up. I do think he's a C tier. Honestly, I'm going to be real with you. I think Defect Rebel goes here in between Spire Assassin and the Zig and Jobby, because he has a shotgun, and while his shotgun isn't better than Spire Assassin's, the LMG gives him a better weapon than the Recycler. And yeah, the Spire Assassin's mobility does basically nothing for her. I think he goes there. Ooh, okay. The Foundation. Okay. Now here's the thing. The Foundation I have here is using his v2.0 icon, hopefully. Like, this foundation is post-rework in his icon. The problem is, Epic never gave us the Rift Launcher, so this rework isn't in the game right now. So, Foundation's Rift Launcher is interesting, because it works differently to the normal one. If you get hit by one of Foundation's rifts, it is instant death, even to yourself. That alone would make him S++ tier all the way up here, if that was his current version in the game. But that is not currently the case. The Foundation right now actually has a Maven Auto shotgun. And because he doesn't have that one-shot mechanic that he would have if he had his rework, I have to judge Foundation based off his current state in the game. But he does have an incredible weapon. He's got some pretty good mobility. And he's got a pretty average shotgun. I think Foundation is... Honestly, I'm going to put him around Sloan. I think he goes in between Sloan and Hybrid right now. I think this is where Foundation goes right now. If you disagree, let me know in the comments. But for now, I think that's where the Foundation goes. Once he gets his rework, that's obviously going to change. That being said, it's finally time to cover the turtles. Yeah. So all the turtles, with the sole exception of Donatello, are very close. So let's order the turtles together, shall we? I think that Leonardo is the best turtle. Simply because he has the AR. I think Raph is next. I think Mikey is the best turtle mythic, but the SMG goes here. And these three are going to go together. Now, where do they go? I think they go above Hope. So let's move Hope down here. We're going to do some adjustment here in a moment. So I think the three turtles go there. As for Donatello, I think Donnie has a Deagle, which is a pretty bad weapon. I think that Donatello goes here. And then we're going to move these characters here. And we're going to do this. For, like, these guys. We'll just, like, put them here, I guess, for now. I don't know. I'm trying to think of how to position this. We'll do this for now. We'll, like, move down the list, if you guys can kind of see that. Alright. Now we have the dealer. So, the dealer is mid. So, the thing that makes the dealer decent is his, what's it called? The EMP. The EMP shreds shields like nothing else. It is very fast at breaking shields, but that's all it can do. So, it's very good at getting people to half health, but what do you do when they're at half health? Well, the thermal DMR is pretty decent, and the rocket ram is okay mobility, but the dealer kind of has a pretty limited loadout. I do think he's a B tier character. I think he's going to go bottom of B. We have the best character in the game, ladies and gentlemen. We have Daigo. Daigo is the best character in Boss Battlegrounds. And there's a couple of reasons for it. He has the second best mobility in the game, having both the Void Oni mask and the Splinter Blades, which I'll get more into in a moment. And, of course, he has the Fire Oni mask, which immediately puts him into S+, regardless. Now, why is he the best character in the game? Because he's the only character who can actually catch Mosquito, other than Kato Thorn. The difference is, unlike Kato Thorn, he can actually hit Mosquito. The Splinter Blades work identical to Raphael's Sai as an item, except for the fact it has unlimited charges, meaning Daigo can just dash in the air as much as he wants. That means that Daigo can catch Mosquito, get even higher than Mosquito, switch to the Oni mask, and fire it at the Mosquito. Or you can even just try and dash into the Mosquito. Daigo is the only character who can fight in the air other than the Mosquito. And while his options are more limited and harder to pull off, he can kill Mosquito. Probably easier than Mosquito can kill him. Which I think immediately puts Daigo as the best character in the game. No contest. But I don't think he's broken enough to go into S++. S++ is like not even on this tier list because it's reserved for the reworked Foundation. Anyway, next up is Cube Assassin. Cube Assassin is a S- character. I do think Origin is better than she is. She does have some pretty bad mobility, and with this, sideways scythe. She has an okay weapon in the sideways rifle, but the sideways minigun is what put the Origin so high on the tier list. I think that she deserves to go... I think she goes above Oscar. I think Kato Thorn is still better than she is. I think it's going to go like this. Carver. Okay, I know we're coming towards the end here because we're starting to get into the C's and the B's in the alphabet. But Ultima Carver is next. And Carver is forgettable. Carver's issue is he's very forgettable. The problem with Ultima Carver is the Woodstake shotgun isn't very good. It's a pretty bad weapon. The explosive, like the pumpkin launcher, it does good damage. 130 is pretty good. It's got a pretty good explosion radius, and it's a good counter to the sweat. But the main reason you're going to want to play as Carver is the chainsaw. The chainsaw, it's not as great as some of the other melee weapons, but if you can get locked into a chainsaw combo, you will cut through someone's health bar like butter. This is one of the highest damaging melee weapons in the game. And for that alone, honestly, I think Carver goes above Stray and below the Herald. I think this is a good spot for Carver. If you disagree, let me know. I think that's where he goes. And now we have Big Dill. Big Dill is definitely an A tier. He has good mobility with the rocket drill. The collateral does some pretty good damage at close range. The pump and dump is insane. The fact that you can run at normal speed while firing the SMG and fire at the same time as a shotgun that does some pretty good damage too. Honestly, I think Big Dill goes just below Carver. I'm going to put him below Carver. You guys can also disagree with that if you want, but you can disagree with any pick on this list. I think Big Dill goes here. Now we have Fletcher Kane. Where do we put the Baron, ladies and gentlemen? Mammoth Pistol, if you hit 2 headshots, does a lot of good damage. Mammoth Pistol hits hard. It's good. It's a good weapon. But it's also limited in terms of its ammo, and you have to hit those shots. He does have some pretty good mobility with the Bat, but not as good as some other characters. The Bat can do some pretty decent damage, but you do knock people away from you. The good thing about the Kneecapper is it can interrupt other melees. So it kind of nullifies things like the Typhoon Blade and Nitro Fists, which is a really good thing. And the Plasma Burst Laser does a lot of damage as well. The problem is that thing has a range limit. Honestly, I think Fletcher Kane is definitely an A tier. I actually think he might be better than Big Dill. Like, thinking about it, honestly, you know what? I think Kane goes here. I think that's where we put Fletcher Kane. Alright, and we have approached our final 2 characters. Let's get into the Ageless. I think the Ageless is going to be an S-. Because they fixed the Shockwave Hammer. This thing can do some pretty good damage, has incredible mobility. The sword gun, the Excalibur, does a lot of damage, especially if you hit a headshot. And the Guardian Shield he can leave up for an unlimited amount of time. He has an infinite time on how much he can hold that up. It blocks every damage going through it, except for melees. And that is incredible. He's basically immune to range characters. And his Shockwave Hammer, it does good damage and it functions as another get off me button, just like the Kneecapper does. Honestly, I think, just for the better mobility, I think he is an S-. I think... Alright, we move these 3 characters down. I think he goes in between the Sweat and Joss. I think that's a good spot for him. If you guys also disagree, let me know. And we have the ace. If you can't tell, I'm recording this when I'm tired. I'm recording this so late because I forgot to record this yesterday. But we are on our final character, and that is the ace. Where does the gold-blooded ace go? Gold-blooded ace has some pretty good weapons. All of these weapons are pretty good. Explosive AR, it is not hit scan, but it does some pretty good damage, and it's splash damage too. You get the mobility out of the twin mag, or blink mag weapon thing. And you have the accelerant shotgun, which is probably the best exotic of all time. And the problem here is her mobility is situational. You have to reload to get the mobility, which kind of sucks. But also, honestly, I think she is higher in B tier. I think she goes just below Night Conqueror. Actually, honestly, I'm going to put her above Night Conqueror. I think she goes here next to Zeus. Alright. I'm kind of happy with this tier list. I'm pretty happy with this. If you guys disagree, please let me know. I would love to hear your opinions on this. But that does bring the end of this video. Thank you guys so much for sitting through all this. Oh my god, my voice is so tired. I've been yapping up a storm for this tier list. But yeah, if you sat through this entire video, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys in the next video, whenever that will be. Peace.